Welcome. This is Points Per Reflection. I am Rick Barry. I'm here with Tim DeCook, and we are just getting started. So, this is our first podcast. We'll be doing these a couple times a week once the season gets started, but we just wanted to give you something here in early August to sink your teeth into, get acquainted with us, and see where we're going. Since it's early August, now is a great time to talk about drafting, draft strategies and players that you may want to pick, want to avoid, or otherwise have some feelings about during your draft. So that's where we're going to start today is talking about drafts. We're going to do some draft strategy stuff, some talk there, and then we're going to move on into a mock draft and talk about some specific players. So without further ado, let's start it right up. Tim, what kind of draft strategy tips do you have for people?
Rick, you and I have been doing this for a number of years, just for fun and not with an analysis component to it. But it really depends on your comfort level in regards to your core players on a roster that you're drafting, and then the settings of the league that you're playing in. One of the longest standing leagues that you and I have personally been a part of is only a 10-teamer, which is smaller than what the average structured league these days are, but it follows the PPR philosophy. And with extra flex positions in that league, leads me personally to be more comfortable with acquiring as many pass catchers as possible. We also have other players in that same league who take a totally different philosophy. And guess what? They end up in the playoffs more often than not, also. But for my money, considering that your standard league these days is a PPR or half PPR setting, getting as many pass catchers as I can on my roster personally is always been the best way to go for me.
Yeah, so especially in a PPR league, right? I think we prioritize those pass catchers. On top of that, it's a great point to make, and I think that's really where you start with draft is know your system and know your rules. You got to know your scoring system, you got to know your setup, how many teams there are, because that's going to dictate what talent is available too. If you have a 12 team, 14 team, 16 team, it's going to be a lot less deep than if you have, a 10 team. The league is deeper, so the talent is more shallow. Right. So I think that's really a great place to start is to do your homework on your league. Read your scoring setup. I can tell you that there are people who don't do that. I know because I've seen it. They don't really keep themselves aware of the specific scoring, and therefore they're not aware of some of the specific tricks that they can use and exploit within their scoring. Differences between tight end premium or just a 1 point per reception or a half point reception, which isn't going to make a huge difference, but it does change it a little bit because it is a change in the scoring.
Great opportunity to plug for those of you who are new to fantasy football. Um, having a league set up where your commissioner is very open and transparent from the get-go, not only about possible league fees, but your standard lineup in terms of roster, and then the setting component. There are a lot of leagues that don't do this, but when you start finding some of those extra people who want to do kickoff or kick return points or more points for quarterbacks for certain rushes, again, knowing what your settings are and who is in your league also, right? Knowing what types of players are in your league. You and I are very similar in terms of our strategy and our methods of drafting for a strong core that we're happy with is different than what a lot of other people in our leagues have been doing lately.
Yeah, and if you're sitting there and you're listening and you're thinking, well, I'm just in some home leagues, you know those people the best. That's the perfect opportunity to exploit some psychology there. If you want to be hero of your home league, know the people around you and understand how they draft. There are people I've seen who almost always every year will go running back, wide receiver, first 2 rounds. There are people who like to load up on running backs. I played with someone like that before, drafted 10 running backs. It's like you just have a fleet of running backs. So knowing people's style and how they draft can be really important, but recognize also also they're going to throw you curves, which leads me to another tip. And I think that that tip is stay flexible. Don't be so married to an idea or a draft that you get rigid and you start making mistakes. Because if you play too rigid in your draft game, then you will come into a time in your draft where it doesn't work out and you're not sure what to do. And that's why it's super important to stay flexible because you do not want to get caught with your pants down with only 30 to 60 seconds to make a pick.
Yeah, that's a really great point, and it goes back to why a lot of us do these mock drafts. Okay, what is the purpose of a mock draft? And it's not to start identifying specific players that you go, oh, I need to have that player on my roster. In fact, we've talked a lot on our own here with points per reflection, not necessarily needing to look at ADP for anything other than a tiering system for comfort level, because the more drafts that you're mocking and the more times that you're going, okay, if I'm drafting from the front and I get to round 4 and I all of a sudden see that there are no more running backs for me, I need to learn something from that so that I can apply that when it actually is going to be a season long opportunity for me.
Yeah, if you happen to draft a guy at ADP, or even if you happen to draft half your team at ADP, it's okay. We just shouldn't be drafting because of ADP. So, you see that guy sitting there and you're like, well, he's next. And I feel like I should take him because everyone else did. Well, run your own team and know what you're looking for because guess what? People are wrong. Even ADP can be wrong. ADP can tell you that a guy is a perfect pick at pick 50 and the guy at pick 55 was better on the season. You don't know until they play. So if you think that you have a better player and if you've done the homework to know why that player is better, which is, what we'll get into later and into the season is really analyzing these players and how to look at them, then go with your guy. Don't go with the ADP because that is exactly what it says. Average. That is your average draft position. So yeah, using it as a loose guide, but not being married to ADP either.
Great example of that a lot of people should be thinking about just goes right back to last year. Brock Bowers at tight end. Um, the reason why he's going so high is the same reason that Sam Laporta last year went so high. We got to remember that 2 years ago, Sam Laporta as a rookie, he set the standard. The standard's just been changed over the course of a year, but last year no one was taking Brock Bowers in the first 4 rounds. This year, Brock Bowers in a PPR league is probably going to be gone by the end of the 24th pick.
Yeah, I could see that being a sincere possibility. So, there are also different strategies you can take. And while I talked about not being married to ADP, I'm a firm believer in that too, not to be married to your strategy over your draft, right? Don't ruin your draft for the sake of a strategy. Like if you're sitting there and you're like, well, I went hero RB or I went zero RB, but you get to the third or fourth round and it's just not going to work out that way. And you have a gem sitting there and you're like, well, I'm not going to let this gem pass me by. Then don't shift your strategy in the draft rather than rigidly adhering to the strategy and missing out on your draft.
Great point, Rick.
And so these are just a lot of basic pointers and tips. I say that to lead into the next thing that I'm going to talk about here, and that's check your internet connection if you're in an online draft. Make sure your platform is working. Don't show up a minute before the draft because let me tell you, that's not only frustrating for you, it is frustrating for your whole league. Your league does not want you showing up the minute before the draft and dealing with lag and not being able to connect and you're asking for special favors. Just get there early. Plan on it. If your draft is at 8, plan on checking in at 7:30. Your time is 7:30, right? Or 7 if you're really worried about it, but 7:30, right? So you have a half an hour to get through any problems, work it out. Then you can go grab a drink of water or something before you start if you get it right. But give yourself the time to set yourself up, make sure the platform's working, and make sure you have a solid internet connection.
I think the key here, if you just take away the biggest nug of information, preparedness is half of your battle to win in not just the fantasy football league, but a lot of things in life, right? If we're not prepared and we're not thoughtful and we're not minimizing the risk factors that we are in control of, such as getting into my draft on time, making sure that I have, and not everyone does this, but I think some of our more prepared drafters are going to have a queue of players, hopefully, that they already kind of have an idea of saying, hey, I really like this player. I'd love to walk away with this player. Not that I'm going to reach or be married to needing that player, but we all have certain desires when we go into a draft of what we would love to see on our roster. Again, if you're not prepared and you're not set up and you're not organized, none of that's going to come to fruition for you.
Yeah. So, buttoning up a lot of different points into one caption, right? One title. And that title is be prepared, like you said.
Also, a big reason why mock drafting is a great practice. It's a good form of sharpening your understanding of player pockets is the phrase that we've used in the past. To piggyback off of Rick's statement there, if I am drafting on the front or back end of my draft, you might have to do a little bit of flexible thinking in terms of it's the sixth round, seventh round, and I got a guy that I really like, but I know that if I'm in the 12th spot and I'm looking and I'm going, ooh, it's the eighth round. If you don't go and get your guy, even though ADP says that he's not supposed to be there, he will not be there on the way back.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up. That's a great point to make. If you're drafting in the front or the back, especially, you very well may have to reach on a couple of guys. I'm not saying you'd have to reach tremendously, but you are going to have to reach a little, which is another reason not to hold tight to those ADPs, right? You're looking at a guy, you're like, I really want this guy for my team, and he's not coming back, but oh, I don't want it to look like I reached on my ADP values. Forget that. Take your guy. Because if you don't, he's not coming back around and you're going to be stuck without him. It's a long haul to wait from the front or the back after you turn.
Be comfortable with what you're looking for, right? And if you're using a lot of ranking systems that you see online and that's what you're comfortable with, then be comfortable with your results. Um, I feel like over the course of my experience, I've done more in terms of looking at year to year statistics, looking at trends, looking at offensive schemes and offensive coordinators and little things like that that the average fantasy football enthusiast might not be looking at, which is totally fine. But I also have a way different understanding now of what I want my team to look like before I step into a draft room than what I did 10, 15 years ago.
Great stuff. Great stuff. So before we jump into some mock here, what I wanted to do was talk about some individual strategies. And I apologize, Tim, I didn't really prep you for this. So we're going to be shooting from the hip. It's more player talk than it is individual strategy talk. I'm going to name the strategies and then we're going to talk about some things. So the first strategy that I would like to talk about is called Hero RB. If you're not familiar with the hero running back strategy, it is taking an absolute stud in the top of your draft and then kind of letting it go for a while. So you can pick up those wide receivers, maybe a tight end if you fancy one of those upper tier guys, maybe even a quarterback. But the bottom line is hero RB means just that. You have one guy who is your superhero at the position, and you're going to attack other positions from that point and know confidently that your RB1 is a stud. So with that in mind, and this is what I said, I'm kind of putting you on the spot, and we didn't really prepare for this. Who are the heroes, right? Who are the hero, and where does that line end?
Mm, that's
So
a great question. I'm going to catch some flack for this, more than likely from a lot of listeners who are pretty well educated in the running back system. I really think that we look back to last year. It's hard to say that Saquon Barkley should not still be at the top of that list. Bijan Robinson's at the top of that list. I really like the possibilities of Devon Achane. Um, I think CMC. When you think about a hero running back, you should be thinking CMC because he has shown to be both sides of the coin, right? I'll go back to 2 years ago. If you drafted CMC 2 years ago and you went 101 and you took him ahead of Jamar Chase, you took him ahead of Justin Jefferson, it worked out for you because he outscored both of those players in a PPR setting and led a lot of teams to fantasy glory. If you go just to the next year and last year and you drafted him in the same way, you probably struggled through making the playoffs and being a successful fantasy football team. And he was the same player. The only difference was injury. We can't predict for injury. So we just go off of what we know. I think CMC is still a top tier running back as long as he's on the field. I think he'll be used that way. Um, Jahmyr Gibbs, I find him to be someone that I'm worried about him in the top tier for this year. And I know that's probably where I'm going to catch some flack from some people because I noted Devon Achan's name way higher than where I have Gibbs currently. And that really has to do with two big things that I can't not stop thinking about. And that would be David Montgomery. Last year, when David Montgomery was out with injury, it was the Gibbs show. He was averaging over 20 a game, well over 20 a game. But if they're thinking about using the same offensive system that's worked over the last few years, you're sharing the rock, you're not getting all those touchdowns, and Gibbs is probably not going to be returning the value on what a lot of people are drafting in the first half of a 12 round draft.
If CMC is your hero, draft him as your hero without worrying about the injury. That's really how I feel about him. Like, if you are injury averse with him, then I would not necessarily consider him a hero RB because if he's out for half the season, then he's not a hero. But if you believe in the fact that he is going to play the season this year, or at least the majority of it, then he can be a hero. So he's a guy you can't be wishy-washy on. He's a guy you got to take a stance on, or else you're going to be uncomfortable with him. And I don't want you to be uncomfortable with him. You're either in or out. Decide if you're in or out on CMC. So that's what I would say. And if you're in, he can be your hero. So, I think that that's a pretty good list of the guys who I would truly call a hero RB. You might be able to throw Derrick Henry in there because he's just the ageless wonder and doesn't slow down. I know that some people would probably add Gianti to that list because of the promise of like this running back who's high volume and was a stud in college and all this. But a rookie is not going to be my hero, folks. Like you may disagree with me on that, but I'm not going to put a rookie in the hero RB spot. Could he be my RB1 if I'm not using the hero strategy? Sure, maybe if you believe in him, but he's not going to be a hero, in my opinion.
Yeah, I really like you bringing up Derrick Henry. I did not include him. However, when you think about touchdown regression, there is no such thing with him. And I thought that maybe him joining the Ravens, um, with all the options and a running quarterback might be something that would affect him. He's gonna be getting a lot of red zone work again this year. And when you look at what his number said, rushes from within the 10-yard line, his conversion rate was otherworldly. I think the only other person who had a conversion rate that touched his was Josh Allen at the quarterback position, which says a lot for both of those players. And again, going back to a hero running back, when I think about a hero running back, I go, what is the absolute upside of those players?
Mhm.
Devon Achane, he only scored an average of 17.6 fantasy points per game. Major split difference between having Tua at quarterback and Tua not at quarterback. So he's not quarterback proof, so to speak, and he only had 200 rushes. But it's the pass catching and it's the upside that players like Christian McCaffrey, Achan, Gibbs, these are elite pass catchers. You just can't get many of them in the league these days.
Yeah, yeah, I hear you there. And just some food for thought here, because there are a couple guys on this list that we did not mention for heroes who, might have a debatable case to be included in the hero category, but there's really only a select few I would call true heroes where I'm completely comfortable not, backing them soon and letting it ride as a hero scenario. But Josh Jacobs and Kyron Williams are two names we didn't mention in hero, but who did finish top 10 in fantasy production last year. Kyron Williams is only 24 and just got a new contract, so worth looking at.
Yeah, I think when I look at the numbers from last year, if you're looking at your overall PPR points that were acquired by every player per position, um, Josh Jacobs was RB6 last year. at 17.2 fantasy points per game in a PPR setting, and followed by Kyron Williams at 7. The top 8, we've mentioned all of those running backs so far, except for one Mr. James Cook. Can you tell me your thoughts on Cook? Would you consider him to be someone that you would, I guess, build a team around at that position?
Would I build a team around him? Yeah, I don't even consider that right now, honestly. With the contract situation there and him holding in, there's a lot of questions when a running back holds in and doesn't get conditioning in, doesn't take the hits early, doesn't get into game form. So he does worry me this year. I'm not going to completely fade him. I've seen that out there. Guys are like, I'm staying away from him. I just don't even want to deal with it. And I totally understand that. I totally understand that. I'm not in that boat yet with him. I say yet because it's early and maybe that's a good time to bring that up. It's only August 10th. Our positions could change on these guys by September 1st. But right now, Cook is not someone I'm looking to build a team around as a hero.
Perfect. One last point to make in terms of running backs when we start thinking about this hero build, and that's this same approach that we like to take when we're thinking about our wide receivers, especially at the beginning of a draft. Yeah, ADP doesn't matter, but I will say this. When you start looking at your top 50 players in a lot of redraft leagues, even if you're doing something like a dynasty or you have some keepers that you're looking at, um, those players are looked at by hundreds of other analysts. And when we look at these lists, they're always going to be certain names at the top because of the word volume. The volume that these guys are getting, if you start thinking about why is Derrick Henry constantly at the top of fantasy football um, lists here, like he had 325 carries last year. That's a lot of carries. That's a lot of times touching the football. You look at Bijan Robinson, between his carries and his 61 receptions in 2024, he had over 360 touches on the season. These guys are just getting the workhorse values that even a Kyron Williams is getting over 300 touches out in LA.
Yes.
That's why guys like James Cook don't fit that mold. James Cook was highly effective last year with 16 rushing touchdowns, added 2 through the air, but he had less than 250 touches. So his efficiency had to have been top of the league in order for him to return the value that we are caring about, and that's fantasy football points.
Yeah. So on that note, we have Barkley at 345 rushing attempts and 43 targets. We have Derrick Henry at 325 rushing attempts and 22 targets. We have Kyron Williams at 316 rushing attempts and 40 targets. We have Bijan Robinson at 304 rushing attempts and 72 targets. We have Josh Jacobs at 301 attempts and 43 targets. And then we have a drop off to Jahmyr Gibbs at 250 rushing attempts, but 63 targets, which is the second highest targets among those running backs behind Bijan Robinson. And so the receptions on that lineup, that Bijan had 61 receptions out of his 72 targets. Gibbs had 52 receptions out of his 63 targets. The running backs are going to have high receptions based on their targets because they are short yardage targets. It's yards after catch with running backs. Yes, I know. Someone's going to, well, you got a wheel, bro. Yeah, I know. I know there's a wheel. I know that sometimes they run out deep, but majority of the time it is checkdowns, flat stuff, screens that they're catching. So really, if you're PPR, you're getting those points. That's 61 extra points for Bijan and 52 extra points for Jahmyr Gibbs just off the top for them catching the ball. And then whatever they do after. And we watched them both last year. We know what they can do with the ball. We know. So that's a great point to make, that touching the ball, volume. Touching the ball is opportunity. That's why Kyron makes these lists. Like someone may think, well, he's a great running back, but I don't really know if he's like, a star or a stud. Well, these numbers say otherwise, sir. Like, if we look at the numbers, Kyron Williams is a stud. He is a stud back, 316 attempts for 1,299 yards, 40 targets, 34 receptions for 182 yards. Sorry to digress into my Kyron Williams love, but I really think it's important to put these numbers out there so that people know he is no scrub. He is absolutely an RB1, and he will be again this year.
Touchdowns are fickle, volume is not.
Mhm. So we spent a lot of time talking about Hero RB. I do want to flip over and talk about this real quick because there's one question I have about this particular roster construction, and this is the zero RB construction. So we're going to flip the script and go from hero to zero. And I just want to the only question I have about zero RBs that we are going to attend to today, unless we get into something else accidentally, is who are the guys to target if you're going zero RB, because that is a tightrope you are dancing with the zero RB. You have, if you're going to win with a zero RB build, you got to hit on one of these guys who have some solid upside later. So, Tim, who do you think are our zero RB build running backs?
Man, that's a great question. And I think the first thing I'd like to clarify is when we think about the term zero RB,
Hmm.
um, that means that I'm not getting any, but what round are we talking about where I'm gonna get my first running back? And for me, I fill out the rest of my roster, man. Like that means that I've already gotten all the receivers that I have for a starting roster. I've also put a pass catcher somehow in my flex option. My tight end is secure, and I already have that quarterback. So you're already looking, Rick, at probably like the seventh or eighth round. Seventh or eighth round running backs this year, man, it can be tricky because I keep seeing in a lot of the mock drafts that I've been doing, when you're getting past that sixth round, there's a steep drop off in terms of, again, what is the volume that the running back is potentially going to have in that offense that I'm comfortable with? Name off the top of my head, I got two of them, and I don't even know if they qualify. I'm going to have to look into this a little bit more, but James Conner, he's kind of more of a six rounder right now, so I don't know if he fits the build. I'd have to kind of drop down, and I'm looking at guys like DeAndre Swift would be one who has a lot of potential, has some history with the now head coach, Ben Johnson, coming out of Detroit. They had a couple years together in Detroit. Again, another guy who can catch passes, so dual threat running back there. Tony Pollard, in some of this more recent news about Tajay Spears being hurt really has an effect, because I think 3 days ago I would not have given you that name. And then, some guys like J.K. Dobbins, right? Had a great year last year with the Chargers, finding a new home. Working with a rookie is always kind of an interesting thing. He's another guy where you can get him pretty late these days in a draft, but if you're avoiding the running back position because you want to really fill that PPR value, you're going to have to start looking at some options where things are not always as they seem on paper, and you might have to go with a guy who ends up being there because of opportunity more than what the team thought skill set was going to be preseason week one.
Yeah, yeah, I hear you there. James Conner may be a little high for the zero RB build, and I am glad that you brought up though the idea of where to go running back if you're going zero RB, because I would say that for hero RB too. If you're doing a true hero build, then that's your only running back until you fill up your skill positions.
That's
That
your
is your,
first round.
yeah, it's your first round and it's your only running back.
Yep.
So until you fill your skill positions. So when we say fill your roster, we don't mean your defense and your kicker. Please do not go out in the 10th and 11th and take your defense and kicker before you go back around. We're talking about your skill position guys, your single players. And yeah, if you're doing zero RB, you want to fill it. If you're doing hero RB, you want one in the first round and then you want to fill it. So that's exactly what you're trying to do. And I'm going to throw a name out there that really I feel like he's not talked about a whole lot right now in fantasy football in general. Just we're not hearing about him or talking about him. That's Tyrone Tracy. I think with the Cam Scatabo news of him coming in and just what's going on in New York and the fact that they're maybe not looking at a great season because their schedule is so hard. I don't know. I find him appealing for a zero RB build. I find him appealing to put on the squad. Maybe he's not the first one I pick. But yeah, so that's a name I would throw in there to take a look at. I'm not, like I said, I'm not saying that, he's your ace in the hole, but this is a zero RB build. So you're not looking for aces. You're looking for possible upside and guys who can get it done. And, the guys around him, we got to look at this. The guys around him right now, based on draft position, are Brian Robinson Jr., Quinshon Judkins, Jalen Warren, Travis Etienne. Tony Pollard's nearby him. I could see you taking Pollard over Tracy, especially with some recent news, not only about Tajay that Tim brought up, but also that it seems as though in camp he is leading the running back room. It's not a true like 50-50. It's him and then Tajay Spears. So based on those couple of tidbits, yeah, he's in there. But the other names around it, I like Tracy over them. I like Tracy over Brian Robinson. I definitely like him over Quinshon Judkins, who's still listed there at 82 overall, player 82 overall. And quite frankly, I am pulling him off my board completely. I don't want that mess. I don't care what you think he's going to do on the field. We got to see him on the field. And he's not doing anything with the Browns. He delayed his trial. So that's going to hang out there for a long time now. We might not see him this year. And I'm not even going to like test those waters myself. So there are things that I will take risks on. That's not one of them. I'm not even going to touch it. So, and other guys are, I mean, Cam Scatabo is there, but he's way, way lower. You're looking at him at like around pick 95. He's next to another possible zero RB guy, Javonte Williams, who's at 96. He's a possible guy you could take in a zero if you want to wait and wait and wait. He may be more your second or third if you wait and you start hammering them late. I don't know if he'd be your one in a zero RB build, but he'd be in there. I don't like his efficiency necessarily. In terms of what he's doing with the ball when he gets it. But he's 2 years after injury, and that's the magic time for those running backs coming back from leg injuries is 2 years. So
Going into that thought process of if I'm gonna try and find as much value in certain pockets as I can, this is why the mock drafting experience sharpens your focus. Because if you don't spend time trying some different approaches to who you're going to draft, when it doesn't make a difference because you're going to have a different one in 2 hours. When you mock draft again, you're getting the information that you need, which would be, hey, if I'm not going to get a running back and my RB1 is a DeAndre Swift, then I'm going to have to be really thoughtful about how I am picking different players and why I'm picking different players later in the draft. When you're looking in the 10th, 11th round, you're still going to want to look at some running backs. Don't leave yourself short-handed at one position because you're not flexible.
yeah, especially running backs start getting injured, and we have to account for that. It happens every year, and I shake my head at people who aren't prepared for it because it happens every year. They're running, and they're usually running a lot if they're starters, so they tend to get injured at least for a game or two, or they get banged up, and their efficiency and their ability drops a little bit while they're healing up. There's all sorts of things that happen, so it's good to have some depth at the position. You don't need to overdo it, but you should have some. And the great news about zero RB, everything, with two sides, the great thing about it is you're going to have some really good wide receivers. So you're not flexing a running back. Just worry about the two you have to start, and you're going to flex a wide receiver because you're going to have some good ones. And you may, depending on how you drafted earlier, have a seriously valuable tight end. You could have a Brock Bowers or a Trey McBride or a George Kittle up there because you took them, because you're not taking a running back. So you might have taken one of those guys, and they're basically receivers at the position of tight end. So you're getting bonus in there by waiting on running back. The problem is you will be light at running back. So yeah, you gotta back them up. You gotta have enough of them that you have a couple good shots at upside and points.
Leads me into another thing to mention here. Your drafting is only part of a season long journey. So if you do go into a draft and say, "Oh, not gonna get those running backs early because I got all this value," and then you continue to have that mindset, and then you walk out with 8 receivers and 4 running backs, and you can really only play one or two for the first couple of weeks. Okay, but understand that you've put yourself in a position where you have very limited opportunities to increase the value of the running back position. There are only two ways to do it: to trade or to waiver wire through either a fab or a rolling waiver system. Those are the only two ways that you're going to change your team moving forward after you're done drafting.
Yeah, take it in phases. So, I've heard this a lot lately, and I'm going to say it for a different reason, but I have heard it a lot. Fantasy football is like chess. I keep hearing that. I don't know why. And now all of a sudden, all these people are saying that maybe it's every year, and I just didn't hear it before. But yeah, but in chess, there's phases to the game. You set yourself up, and then there's the middle phase, and then there's this closing phase where you attack the king and try to win, right? Fantasy football is the same way. It's set up in phases. You have to take phase one is your draft, right? And then you have some season play, which is your phase two. But by the time you're getting into mid fantasy season, you're almost moving into phase three, which is reassessing where you're at, figuring out what you look like against the rest of your league, and pushing the back half of the season towards playoffs. That's when you really want to buckle down. Because if you lose a couple games in the beginning, you can still catch up and win. If you lose a couple games in the back end, you might be out of the playoffs. You got to be kind of building it that way. And then your attempts towards checkmate are in the playoffs. Once you get in the playoffs, you want a roster set up for checkmate. And so that's your checkmate phase. So doing this in phases is really important, and staying active and engaged through the phases for a couple of reasons. One, for your own team and your success, but two, for your league mates, because everyone hates it when someone bails halfway through the season because their team's not good. Keep playing, keep trying, keep it competitive, if not for yourself, for the integrity of the league. You bought in, you want to be there, act like you want to be there all season. So that's just a little side stump that I get on sometimes, because I've definitely been in leagues where things started to fall apart because people aren't active, and it's nonsense. You wanted to play the whole season.
Yeah, I really can't stress enough the concept of finish what you start.
Yeah, there you go. Finish what you
In
started.
everything that you do, right? There's a lot of things that we don't like to do, and Rick and I in our professional lives, we both work with children as much as we do with adults, and for kids, we see this all the time where they start something and then they either get distracted or bored or angry or whatever, or they just don't care anymore. Um, Anyone who's playing in fantasy football leagues with me, they're not children. So, as adults and saying, hey, we started this, yeah, I mean, it's a dedicated thing that we have to be prepared to do. And with the understanding of the quote from the movie Talladega Nights, if you ain't first, you're last, right? And we're all just trying to get that belt, get those bragging rights in the off season. um, you got to work for it, and you got to understand that not every single time that you enter something are you going to be the winner.
So we gave you a couple names to look out for with the zero RB build. Here's some names that you may be thinking about in a zero RB that I might kind of be staying away with unless I can't get the other guys. Aaron Jones, I love him. I do. I'm an Aaron Jones supporter. I like him. But he is now there with another running back who Minnesota has actually invested in. And when a team invests in someone and they don't just kind of fall in their lap on some easy contract, they're probably going to use them. And so with Jordan Mason there getting picked up and brought into the fold, I expect Aaron Jones to lose some touches. That may be very much a true committee. We might see a 55-45, 50-50, 60-40 in that, and losing that high of a percentage is going to hurt Aaron Jones' numbers.
Yeah, and on the flip side of that coin, if you're thinking about, hey, I'm doing a zero running back build, it just happened that way. Who are some guys that I can look at who have potential, even though they might not have that starting gig? And on Minnesota's roster, I mean, we follow the money, right? So Jordan Mason did some great stuff before he got injured last year. His running efficiency was pretty good. Um, got paid pretty well by the Minnesota Vikings to be there. So we would assume that, again, if you're going to pay somebody, you want to see some sort of production from that player. A couple other names that I'm just going to shoot out that I would think about as options. Again, not to sit and go, I'm going to plug this guy in week one because he's going to give me 15. It's not going to happen that way. But throughout the course of the season, you get to week 4, week 6, week 8. If this player is still on your bench, is probably going to get some run. J.K. Dobbins would be a name. Um, I really like Jerome Ford's opportunity chances right now in that offense. Again, Cleveland's
The
not
late
going to
one.
be a great offense, but last year in limited action, Ford had 37 catches on 43 targets, and they're going to probably check down a bunch regardless of who's at quarterback out in Cleveland. Austin Eckler, we got to remember that, again, things change fast. The world moves fast. The NFL is a fast moving thing. Austin Eckler was like a top 5 running back 3 seasons ago with the Chargers. Yeah, he's not going to be the one in Washington. Yeah, they got Jaden Daniels. That's a totally different thing. But aside from being a couple years older, he doesn't have all the mileage on him that some of these other running backs do. And again, I really like the opportunity that he might have to get and carve a larger role in that offense.
So we just talked about hero RB for a bit, zero RB, and we are delaying the mock. So let's get in there and stop delaying. Let's just get into this mock and do a mock draft. We're going to set something up here that is pretty standard. We're going to look at a single QB, so no two QB, no super flex, two running backs, two receivers, a flex, and then we'll go ahead and do defense and kicker in this one. So, oh, and a tight end, obviously. I forgot to say that. So quarterback, two running back, two receiver, one flex, one tight end, defense and kicker. Since those are predominant leagues, use defense and kicker. I don't love it, but that's just me.
It's not just you. All I'm gonna say this because this is our first opportunity to spread some word out here. Team defense and kicker. Traditionally, historically, strategically, over the course of years, what we've been told by a lot of analysts and a lot of people who play fantasy football for fun, for money, for love. When are we drafting those positions? When are we told to take these positional players? When am I taking the Baltimore defense? When am I getting Justin Tucker? It's at the end of the draft, right? You're not getting a kicker, even though it's a starting position, which should be something we think about. We're not getting kickers in round 10. Most people are not doing that. They're getting the value of the depth of the positional players that you have to rotate. It makes me feel like, a home league that Rick and I are part of. We switched out how many years ago, Rick? A number of years ago. Um, got rid of the team defense, got rid of the kicker, added individual defensive player positions. We have 2 of them just to replace literally the same positional spots on all the rosters that we have. Those players, we will take some of them in the 10th and 11th round of a draft. They have much more value. It feels like, for me, those positions are just as important as taking your RB2, making sure that you have a backup quarterback if you're in a big league. Those are things that are pretty standard. I just have a problem sometimes thinking about kickers and defenses and just the impact that they can have on a week to week basis that have nothing to do with anything but fortune and luck.
Yeah, and that's typical. I will say I've been in a league before where kickers and defenses were unusually weighted. Like it was a weird scoring system. If you're in a league like that, then I totally understand, jumping the gun to get, a guy who's going to blast him like Justin Tucker back in the day or whatever, Brandon Aubrey now, who's going to kick some nice kicks. So we have this mock set up. I used a random number generator to pick my position, and I was given position 4. I will be drafting from 4.
Awesome. With the number of mock drafts that we've been doing, I gotta try something a little bit different. I'm gonna go on the end. I'm gonna pick from the 12 spot. with this mock draft, it's being conducted on Sleeper, and I have it set up so that it is, I think we get 30 seconds per pick. We did not fill every other position with live drafters, so you will see some ADP picks and some randomized things from some of the automated picks in between that might not be uh, a normal thing, but we're gonna work with it. We ready to go?
Oh, I'm ready.
All right, let's get it. So really quickly in the first round, you saw Jamar Chase, Saquon Barkley, Justin Jefferson go in the first three picks. That's fairly standard.
Yep. So for me at 4, I am looking at either Bijan Robinson or CD Lamb. Gibbs is there, but I'm not looking at him. I am going to grab Bijan Robinson, and that could be the start of a hero RB build. We'll see.
After Bijan, you got Jahmyr Gibbs, Derrick Henry, Puka Nacua, CeeDee Lamb goes at 8, Amon-Ra St. Brown 9, Malik Neighbors, and Christian McCaffrey get to the turn. So now looking at the turn where I'm picking, Ashton Genty based on ADP sits at the top. But what I'm seeing at this point, to be honest, is that you see so much value in your wide receiver position. I'm gonna double tap and go away from the running backs. You have Genty, you have Achane. Those are both really good options. But I want to see what my build would look like if I start with two really high end wide receiver ones. So on the turn, I go Nico Collins and Brian Thomas Jr. After that, going back around, Ashton Genty, AJ Brown, Devon Achane, Brock Bowers goes at the 2.5, and Drake London, Trey McBride, Bucky Irving get us back to Rick.
Yeah, so honorable mention here to the fact that CMC is now sliding into the first round. So I think that's interesting. That's an ADP thing because it was a computer draft pick. So he slides up there to team 11 in the first round. And I think that's kind of great. So I now have my running back and I'm looking at receivers. And I think I am going to go with Garrett Wilson as my wide receiver 1. And I chose him over Lad McConkey over JSN. I like Lad. I do for volume reasons, but I want to go with Garrett Wilson here because I think there's a lot of great opportunity for him to step up and be something.
A lot of action have gone around. So, Rick, your third pick, you picked up Kyren Williams, who we spoke about earlier. So, you're looking at a start of Bijan Robinson, Wilson, and Kyren Williams. Losing a lot of quarterbacks at this point. I'm kind of figuring out what's left. I'm gonna stay away from running back. I went and got George Kittle. He's the third tight end off the board with the last pick of the third round. This is where we talk about sometimes you have to go get somebody rather than sit and wait for them to come back around. I got some running back options now. I'm not going to go zero RB. I think there are too many decent players available. I'm going to go and get Kenneth Walker, the third, with my first pick in the fourth. A lot of running backs are coming off the board in the fourth round. That's something also to be aware of is when you see positional runs. Um, Now we're looking at Rick, your 4.9.
Yeah, so I grabbed Kyron there in the third, and I like Kyron Williams, and I'm not going to go hero RB because I'm just trying to get a really solid roster going here. So as I look at positional value now, I'm going to go back to wide receiver. I'm going to take Devontae Adams. I like him with the Rams. And it's going to spin back around, and I am looking in the fifth. So I already have two running backs, so I'm going to let that sit for a while. And I have two good running backs, so I'm not too worried about that position. I'm looking over at tight end. I do like Hawkinson. I do like Laporta. I think I can wait at tight end though, so I'm probably not going to go that direction. I'm looking at quarterback at this point. I'm comfortable waiting, so I'm going to go back to the receiver, and I like DJ Moore.
You saw two different runs happen in the fourth round that I want to just make a point of. You saw at the beginning of the fourth round. Again, this is just generated by a lot of AI, but you saw running back um, stretch followed directly by a wide receiver stretch where you lost Devontae Adams, Marvin Harrison, Cortland Sutton, Rasheed Rice on the turn. So now I'm coming back around, looking at my options here. I mean, we got some decent young players, I think, right now. I'm gonna try for RJ Harvey as my RB2. Again, not sure really what to expect, but back end of the season should be much stronger than the first end. Um, and now again, looking at what I have available to me with my start Nico Collins, Brian Thomas Jr., Kittle, Kenneth Walker, and Harvey, I'm staying away from quarterback. I don't need to just fill my starting spots that way, but I am going to take a shot here. I'm going to get Jalen Waddle in the sixth round.
I'm back on the clock now. And I'm gonna probably go receiver again because I do like going receiver heavy. And there's a guy sitting there who I really like this year, and that is Calvin Ridley. So I've gone three receivers in a row now. Between my 6 and 7, Hawk, Pacheco, Quinshon Judkins, Andrews, Adunze, Swift. I'm back on the board now, and I think that this is a good time to take my tight end, and I'm looking at either Evan Ingram or David Njoku, maybe Tyler Warren, but I think that I am going to take Njoku here. This is round 7, by the way, so I went tight end round 7.
Coming back around on the turn, I was kind of waiting. A lot of tight end quarterback movement here. So you lose Andrews, Njoku, obviously, Mayfield. And then I was looking at Bo Nix, kind of like him in year two. Didn't happen for me. So now I'm kind of looking at some other options. And for right now, again, I'm gonna take a look at running back. I'm gonna get Caleb Johnson out of Pittsburgh. Um, and again, kind of looking at some different options of who's around. The guy I'm starting to really get really high on right now. Again, got to reach for him based on ADP. He's not going to be one of those first names because I'm looking at names like Tyrone Tracy, Debo Samuel, Cooper Kupp, Jalen Warren. I'm going all the way down here, and I'm going to get Emeka Egbuka out of Tampa Bay with my first pick of the eighth.
And I think that's a solid pick. He's definitely climbing there. Back around, and I am looking at, I was looking at maybe a backup running back, but a couple of the guys I was looking at kind of went. So I might slide off that. I'm going to go back to receiver. I'm going to take a rookie. We're going to go with Matthew Golden as my fifth receiver off the board total. Okay, now we're back around. We're in round 9, and I got to tell you that right now I am looking at quarterback because I don't have one yet, and we have a pretty good lineup here of Kyler Murray, Justin Herbert, Brock Purdy, Dak Prescott. This is a year where you could wait on quarterback if you wanted to wait, and I did choose to wait. I'm going to put my faith in someone who I have lost a lot of faith in, but I'm going to put my faith in him anyway, and I'm going to take Kyler Murray because he runs, and he said he's going to run more this year.
I'm going to run more this year too. It's my New Year's resolution.
Better hurry up. It's already August, so 4 more months in this year. Maybe it's next year.
All right. After Murray goes Tyler Warren, Brandon Ayuk, Ricky Pearsall, Cam Scatabo, Jonnu Smith, Justin Herbert, and Javante Williams coming back to the turn. I also do not have a quarterback. Feels like a good time to get one before um, I run into some problems, and I'm going to try something a little bit different. Again, this is a mock. I'm going to grab Brock Purdy to be my starter since I have George Kittle. Um, Gives me an opportunity when they get touchdowns to get twice as many points. And then because I'm kind of worried about not having this later, I'm going to get Dak Prescott, and I'm just going to double tap the position.
Interesting. Quarterback double tap rounds 9 and 10. So if you have a stud, you do not have to back up your quarterback. But if you have a quarterback who you're not certain about, if you're doing this late round thing, it can't hurt if you think you have the roster space to back him up. And here we are back around. I have not taken a running back in a while, so let's look back at that well. And actually, someone who I happen to really like is sitting right there for me, and I'm going to grab him up, and it's J.K. Dobbins. I'm going to go ahead and add him to the squad. Okay, we're coming back around here. I have some options. I could go back to running back and take one of the guys that I like there. I could take another receiver since I can't have too many in my mind. But what I'm actually going to do here is the same thing Tim did. While some people might say, well, you should have faith in Murray, I have been burned by Murray before, and I'm going to back him up with Justin Fields and take two guys who have some running upside, two guys who could also fail me. So.
And with your current roster makeup, it's very similar. Justin Fields paired now with your wide receiver one in the second round, Garrett Wilson. Not a
Correct.
bad. Um, so we have five more picks. I'm going back to back here again. Some teams are starting to pick kickers and team defenses. I'm going to wait on that. A lot of question marks in New Orleans right now. One that should not be is the volume that Rashid Shaheed will be receiving at wide receiver. So I'm going to pick him in the 11th. And then thinking the 12th here, I want to be ahead of a run at the end versus at the back of a run. So I'm going to go and get the Broncos defense in the 12th. This does start a run of defenses in the 12th as we have a total of five off the board at this point. Coming back through the 12th round, trying to get back to Rick. Three more defenses go.
I'm gonna hold on defense, like the old school suggestion would be, and not pick one. I want to make a comment about Garrett Wilson. I'm bullish on him. I think he can crack the top 12. So he is a wide receiver one to me, and I drafted him as such. So that makes sense. Here I'm going to go back to running back, and I'm going to grab Tyjae Spears, put him on my roster. So now I have one, two, three, four, five receivers, four running backs, two quarterbacks, and a tight end. And I do like having six receivers since I typically flex one. And Marvin Mims is someone who I do believe is a breakout year this year. I'm going to go ahead and put him on there. He does have some competition there in Denver, but I believe in him. Third year breakout candidate. It was him or Luther Burden for me.
Coming back around again on the turn right now, I have three running backs. I have five receivers, two quarterbacks, and Mr. George Kittle. Kind of taking a look at what's around right now. I'm gonna double tap my running back position just to get a little bit more depth. Um, Tootin out of Jacksonville, that's kind of a lottery pick more than anything else. Not real sure what to expect out of that team or out of that backfield, but he shows a lot of promise. Preseason game number one went pretty well for him overall. Uh, Taking a look at another guy who right now, again, not the starter, but got a lot going for him, and that's Braylon Allen out of New York.
I like the Braylon Allen pick. I think that that's a decent shot there, given what they're doing in that backfield. It's looking a lot like it's going to be a new Lions backfield where they have Monty and Gibbs, and it's going to be Hall and Braylon Allen. So I have to get a kicker and a defense. When I draft kicker, I like to draft kickers who I think are on teams that will get close, but maybe not punch it in, the stars between the 20s. And so I picked Daniel Carlson from Las Vegas. It's a good enough offense, but maybe not a touchdown heavy offense, which could be good for a kicker. And Carlson is a pretty steady kicker. So those two things combined lead me to take him. Now I need to grab my defense. I'm really just looking for a defense that I feel good about and that I'm bullish on because there's been a bunch taken already. So looking at that situation here and looking at where I sit, I am going to go ahead and I am going to take the Cowboys defense. Oh, it gave me the Buccaneers. I talked too long. Gave me the Buccaneers defense, which I'm also not sad with, so that's fine.
Could be better this year, actually.
Yeah.
Playing a weaker division helps things. So we're getting to the Mr. Irrelevant position. I still don't have a kicker. This is a strategy that some people take before the season starts, knowing that you have waivers or opportunities to get other positional value. I'm gonna not get a kicker, and I'm gonna walk out of here with no kicker. But that's because I really like late round Pop Douglas out of New England, and I'd rather have six receivers and then have to drop somebody later.
Yeah, so I like that you threw that in there. And I want to point out if anyone listening is like, oh, I hate that. Oh, what do you mean you walked away without a kicker? Then if you commission a league, then you should be making a rule for that. That if you run with kicker defense, you have got to walk away from the draft with one. If you are in a league and you're not the commissioner and you would like that to happen, you need to put that up to a league vote before your draft and before the season starts. So I think it is a great idea to skip kicker if you are a waiver find type person who likes to dig out your kickers or likes to float it all season. Some people just do that and they float kicker and defense. There are leagues where it works better than others. I've been in leagues where people back up their defense. I don't like to back up my defenses, but if you have, let's say you're in a 12-team league and 10 of them back up their defense, that's 20 defenses, right? Like that's deep defense gone. So you may not be able to float the waivers as easily, and you may have to do something there, and at least take one before you walk away. So, pay attention to that math and how it works out going into the season for waivers and possible acquisitions.
Okay, really quickly to summarize our teams, taking a look at Rick's team, Bijan Robinson, Garrett Wilson, Kyron Williams, Devontae Adams, DJ Moore, Calvin Ridley, David Njoku, Matthew Golden, Kyler Murray, J.K. Dobbins, Justin Fields, Tajay Spears, Marvin Mims, and then rounding out with Daniel Carlson and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense from the four spot.
From the four spot.
From the four spot. My team again at the 12, avoiding running back in the first couple rounds. I would have loved to get Christian McCaffrey to be honest, but it didn't happen. Nico Collins and Brian Thomas Jr., George Kittle, Kenneth Walker III, RJ Harvey, Jalen Waddle, Caleb Johnson, Emeka Egbuka, Brock Purdy, Dak Prescott, Rashid Shaheed, Denver's defense, Bayshell Tootin, Braylon Allen, and Demario Douglas.
Great. So
Thoughts?
I did something that I will not likely do in actual drafting situations, and that's I went very strong running back. That's usually not my game. My game is usually not to have two really strong running backs. This time it's what I did, and I wanted to see how the build looked. I don't hate it. I like the ground I made up at wide receiver, except I also do not like having Kyron Williams and Devontae Adams. I typically don't like to have a receiver and a running back from the same offense. But you never know. It could be a high scoring offense, and they got to pass those touchdowns around. I think that you're looking for high scoring offenses if you can. You want to take players from high scoring offenses. So you have a better chance of getting touchdowns if you do. If I were to grade my draft, I think I'd give it a solid B. It's not A territory, but it's not a C.
It's interesting looking at those middle rounds and kind of seeing like pockets of value and based on again every team's roster build's going to be very unique. But as I'm kind of looking through and a couple picks that I want to point out, I really like the value of David Njoku at tight end in the seventh round. You're talking about a guy who finished points per game, even though he missed a bunch last year due to injury. He had his very strange off the field fire accident also, which cost him a little bit of playing time and recovery time. This guy was top five in a lot of metrics, has already had a Pro Bowl season out of Cleveland. Definitely a breakout candidate at that position. I think another guy that I really am obviously very high on as we have posted quite a bit already on our platform of X through points per reflection. Calvin Ridley going at the back end of the sixth round feels like a steal. I know that there are a lot of receivers and running backs that are going off the board, flying right away in the fifth and the sixth. Um, Not many have the projection opportunity that Calvin Ridley has in terms of air yards, in terms of value to the team. If you look at it not from a fantasy point of view, where are they going to be successful in Tennessee? And that's going to be a major contributor for their offense, which also runs in correlation with what we're looking at. So those are two picks that I looked at off of your team, Rick, that I really like the value that you had in the sixth and the seventh round.
Yeah, I agree with Ridley, and I think that they're gonna have to get him involved if they want to win games. There's no way he can't be heavily involved based on their situation there with pass catchers. So, I just think that he's a really good mid-round receiver to target. So Tim, your roster, I really like Kenneth Walker in the fourth. I think that, a Ken Walker who stays healthy all season is a top 10 running back. So it's hard to miss, fourth round and you can get him and possibly have a legitimate contender in that spot and still have three players before him that you picked up. And it really is perfect when you think about the fact that you went wide receiver heavy first. So taking two wide receivers and having Nico Collins and Brian Thomas and George Kittle, you take him in the third to spin around and get Ken Walker. That's about as good as you can do there at running back one after you've gone three rounds. You're in four rounds deep and you get your running back one who could be a legit running back one. I think that's great, especially because earlier in the draft we were talking about the run on running backs that kind of happened in the at third-ish, fourth. There was a little bit of a run there, and so I like Kenneth Walker a lot, and I like Emeka Egbuka in the eighth because I mean we're already here, and I mean he's not a secret anymore. There's no secret there that he is lighting it up at camp. We know Godwin's having some healing issues right now, and we're not really sure when he'll be back and if he'll be 100% when he comes back. So I love that. The strategy of leaving the kicker empty and grabbing Pop Douglas isn't a bad one. Where would you put him? Maybe third in line for targets behind Henry and Diggs? Is that where you put him, or maybe second
I
behind?
put him second. I'm going to put him second right now, simply because when you think about the progression of that quarterback, he's young. I think if we're thinking what is the upside of that offense in terms of philosophy change from what we've known in New England for many, many years, um, they still want to run the ball, right? So they went and you look at what they drafted, but then you look and say, okay, well, what did they do last year that they want to build on? And yeah, you went and get Stefon Diggs, and he's your seasoned vet. But Pop Douglas on a per game basis, when he was getting action, they threw the ball to him quite a bit. He's showing out at camp. They said everything that he's been doing is equivalent to what you're going to have as a starting receiver, and I can easily see him lining up over 80% of the time opposite Steph Diggs. So, I mean, that ball's going to go somewhere.
I agree. I agree. George Kittle is surprisingly polarizing this year. I'm hearing a lot of, and I say surprisingly because you wouldn't think so. I mean, he's elite. He finishes high in the rankings every season. He was tight end three last year, but I know that, he gets injured and people just don't want to deal with that, right? People don't want to have to replace a player like that, knowing that if he's in, he's going to do really well for you. And knowing if he's not, you might be sitting on your 3 for 40, right? Or whatever you do, your 7 point tight end without him, and then, that's what it is. And I think people just don't want to deal with that headache. I think that he is kind of there's another 49er who succumbs to this syndrome, and that's Christian McCaffrey, right? The injury syndrome. When you see a guy getting hurt and you have to keep replacing him, you're like, I just don't want to do that anymore. And you get fatigued on it. But I am bold enough to take Kittle. I love George Kittle this year. And especially given the fact that you move some pieces around there, Debo's out of town. We still don't really know about Brandon Ayuk and what he's gonna contribute after he got his contract. Yeah, he's talented, but I got to be honest. Last year when he was on the field, he didn't look good. And if he fixes that, wonderful. Kittle's still gonna get his targets. Is the bottom line. The bottom line is Kittle's getting his targets. So again, if he's healthy, then I'm in.
Yeah, I mean, I think looking at this roster that I've constructed at here, I think one of the only issues that I have with it right now is not getting a kicker. It's maybe I should have gone away from Tootin or Allen and stuck with four running backs and then backed up George Kittle. Where I was looking to get a second tight end didn't really make sense because you're looking at that Emeka Ibuka, Brock Purdy area in the eighth, ninth round. After that, it's kind of a funny little business when you start looking at guys like Jake Ferguson and Dallas Goedert, and didn't really feel like I wanted to push there. But for those of you out there who are down on Kittle, we have a friend who we play with quite a bit in our home league, and we want to talk about somebody who really just looks at recency bias and recency bias alone. The old brittle George Kittle. I mean, you can say that, but he only missed 2 games last year. This year, San Francisco has the easiest on paper strength of schedule based on Vegas win loss projections for the season. We already talked about Brandon Ayuk not being available at the beginning of the year. You got Juwan Jennings with a contract dispute, so he's probably playing some games right now. You don't have many pass catchers outside of Ricky Pearsall. Um, George Kittle and CMC, they are the only other two proven commodities in an offense where Shanahan likes to move the ball. He likes to give Purdy some opportunities to get some easy yardage. Kittle's yak is fantastic, and again, despite missing 2 games last year and not having 100 receptions, not even having 100 targets, I'm sorry, for the third year in a row, to be in the top 3 years in a row in metrics like receptions, metrics like yardage, and then your touchdowns. Last 3 seasons, Kittle's been top 2 or 3 in all of those. So if he's healthy, he's on the field, he's a producer.
Tim, you relied a whole lot on rookies, and I don't love doing that myself because there's a lot of variance in possible endings to that. But you did, yeah. Caleb Johnson, RJ Harvey, Bashal Tootin, like three of your running backs, three of your five running backs are rookies and need to put some work together for you to value that. I worded
Yeah,
that.
I want to talk about that real quick. I did that by design, actually, Rick. I went and got some what I felt were some proven receivers, guys that are going to give me a real solid baseline of points per game per week for my fantasy output. And Nico Collins and Brian Thomas Jr. Those guys are both over the last, I think, 8 games for Brian Thomas Jr. He was averaging over 8.5 targets per game. Yes, that was not with Trevor Lawrence, but I really don't care. You got Liam Cohen in Jacksonville from Tampa Bay, and thinking about what he did with Baker Mayfield last year just feels right. Um, when I look at a standard roster, the position that I am willing to bail on and not rely on from a week to week basis is going to be the RB2 position. So I have Kenneth Walker. I'm banking on some health there. If he goes south, then maybe things get a little dicey. I'm going to make some trades, and I have what I consider to be pretty substantial value on my bench right now. But purposely looking at RJ Harvey in Denver with a coach who is well known. Sean Payton did quite a bit with one Alvin Kamara for a number of years, and that worked out pretty well. RJ Harvey, he projects to be a third down back, a three down back. I'm sorry, where his pass catching and pass protection skills are above what most rookies have. And I went with Caleb Johnson in the seventh. Again, Pittsburgh. That's a historical franchise where they are a ground and pound team. Mm, they really like Caleb Johnson. I'm going to take a shot on both of those guys, and all I need is one of them to work out.
I like it. I like it. So another thing I wanted to point out was since I went running back heavy early, two of my first three rounds, and I felt really confident there. This is go plays into team build strategy, right? I hammered receiver, 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 tight end, receiver, quarterback after the third round. I did not look back at running back until round 10. That's a little facetious. I looked, but I did not take a running back until round 10 because I just wanted to fill in other things, knowing confidently I have two stars that are going to be in there. And barring injury, they're going to roll. They're going to roll for me this season, except for their bye weeks and possible injury. So, another thing I wanted to point out, and this is the imperfection of mock drafts. Team one starts off Jamar Chase, Lamar Jackson, JSN, and then they just get wacky the next 3 rounds. Team one is like, give me all the risk. I want all the risk I can handle. Rashee Rice in the fourth, and we're waiting on his suspension, the impending suspension, which could or could not happen. So 4 is a little early for me with him. I would like to wait until the fifth. If he were there on the fifth, I would have taken him. Absolutely, I would have taken him in the fifth, because you're getting a possible wide receiver one really cheap at that point, but you do have to deal with the possible suspension. So I'll point that out. But here's the risk profile for team one, right? It starts Rashee Rice, then round 5, you go Joe Mixon. Then round 6, you go Quinshon Judkins. They were just like piling it on there. So I don't think that'll happen in a real draft. You're not going to get those three going to the same team 3 rounds in a row like that. But that's something that happened with team one, and I thought that was interesting.
I want to um, just push up against your comment about Rashee Rice. I'm not taking him until after the 6th round.
Okay.
And I understand the potential value of what he's already shown. He before missing substantial time last year was getting all of the targets from Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City, averaging almost 20 a game. Um, I I'm gonna be honest, I can't justify taking him and sitting him for more than likely 6 games. That's a long time for me to have a guy on the bench that I'm gonna, rely on to be a guy to outperform quite a few other big names. I mean, you're looking at guys like Cortland Sutton. He's a wide receiver one in Denver. You're looking at Zay Flowers. Say what you want about that offense. He's the wide receiver one, and that's a high scoring team, and he's going to play all of the games unless he gets injured, right? So I'm personally not willing, but this is the beauty of fantasy football, right? Is that you're going to have guys that are going to take shots, and as long as they're happy when they walk out the door with the players that they have, more power to you. We at Points Per Reflection like to use data to help us stay informed on what players have done in the past. Not to say that we're drafting for points of previous years, but they are very good indicators of trends, and they're very good indicators of things that are likely to happen depending on some of these other factors that we don't control, such as offensive scheme, run pass percentages, and then how much value you actually have to your offense in real life.
Excellent. So, this was our first podcast. Hopefully, we can get another one up in August here before the season gets rolling. But I am Rick. He is Tim. We are Points Per Reflection. You can find us on X at PP Reflection. We are on YouTube, Points Per Reflection. You can hit us up on Gmail at pointsperreflection@gmail.com. We're setting some other things up, but that's where we live right now. So feel free to hit us up. We welcome your questions, comments, and activity. We would love to hear from you. We love fantasy football. I hope you all have a great season. Take care.